The city sleeps, but the streets never truly rest. Neon lights flicker against wet asphalt, casting long shadows that seem to breathe with the night. It's 3 a.m., and most people are safe in their beds, dreaming peacefully. But for those who drive after midnight, the world reveals a different face, darker, unpredictable, and sometimes terrifying. This is the story of Michael, a father of two who thought he knew what risk looked like. He was wrong. If you want more shocking true stories like this, subscribe to Last Ride and hit that like button right now. You won't regret it. Michael had been driving for Uber for 8 months. The night shift paid better, and he needed every extra dollar to cover his daughter's medical bills. His wife didn't like him working these hours, but what choice did they have? The city at night became his office, a moving confessional, where strangers shared their lives for 15 minutes before disappearing forever. Most rides were forgettable: drunk college kids, tired nurses heading home, quiet businessmen staring at their phones. But this night would be different. This night would haunt him. The ping came at 3:17 a.m. Pickup location: 7th Street, near the old industrial district. Michael's stomach tightened. He knew that area. Everyone did. It wasn't the kind of place you went unless you had to. The app showed a rating of 4.6 stars for the passenger. Not great, but not terrible. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the decline button. But then he thought of the hospital bill on his kitchen counter, the worried look in his wife's eyes. He accepted. The drive there took 12 minutes through empty streets. Streetlights illuminated patches of urban decay, abandoned warehouses with broken windows, chain-link fences crowned with razor wire, corners where shadowy figures conducted business that dissolved at the approach of headlights. Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. The GPS led him to a narrow alley between 2 brick buildings, their walls covered in faded graffiti. This wasn't right. Passengers usually waited on main streets, under lights, where it was safe. But the pin was here, in the darkness. Then he appeared, a man in his late 30s, wearing a black hoodie despite the warm night, jeans that hung low, and sneakers that had seen better days. But it was his eyes that Michael noticed first, darting, calculating, filled with an energy that screamed danger. He carried a black duffel bag clutched against his chest like it contained everything he owned. The man opened the rear door and slid in without a word, immediately checking behind them through the rear window. The smell hit Michael instantly, a chemical odor, sharp and synthetic, mixed with stale sweat and cigarette smoke. "Drive," the passenger said. Not a greeting, not a hello, just drive. His voice was rough, edged with something Michael couldn't quite identify. Paranoia? Fear? Aggression? Maybe all three. Michael pulled away from the alley, trying to keep his breathing steady. The destination was across town, a 22-minute ride according to the app. 22 minutes that suddenly felt like an eternity. The passenger kept the duffel bag on his lap, both hands wrapped around it protectively. Every few seconds, he glanced out the rear window, then checked his phone, then looked out the window again. The pattern repeated obsessively. Michael tried to normalize the situation, falling back on the small talk that usually eased tension. "Long night?" he asked, his voice coming out steadier than he felt. The passenger didn't respond immediately. Then, without looking away from the window, "Just drive. Don't talk." The words landed like stones in the silence. Michael's heart rate increased. He'd had rude passengers before, but this felt different. This felt like a warning. He focused on the road, but his peripheral vision tracked every movement in the back seat. The bag never moved from the passenger's lap. Never. 3 blocks later, the passenger's phone rang. He answered immediately, speaking in a low, urgent voice that Michael had to strain to hear. "Yeah. No. I'm moving now. 20 minutes. Maybe less. Tell him I'm clean. Nobody followed me." Michael's blood went cold. Nobody followed me. The words hung in the air like smoke. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the passenger's face bathed in the blue glow of his phone screen, jaw clenched, eyes hard, forehead glistening with sweat despite the air conditioning. This wasn't a normal ride. This was something else entirely. Then it happened. As the passenger shifted in his seat, the duffel bag tilted slightly, and the zipper, not fully closed, gaped open about 2 inches. Michael's eyes flicked to the mirror at the exact wrong moment, or maybe the exact right moment. Inside the bag, wrapped in clear plastic, were rectangular packages, lots of them. Tightly compressed, uniform in size, stacked with mechanical precision. The chemical smell intensified. Michael's mind raced through explanations, desperate for an innocent one. But there was no innocent explanation. He knew exactly what he was looking at. And in that instant, if you're still watching, subscribe to Last Ride right now. Hit that bell icon so you never miss stories like this. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Michael's hands began to sweat on the steering wheel. His mind became a battlefield of terrible options. If he stopped the car and told the passenger to get out, would he become violent? The man was clearly involved in something serious, something worth enough money to make people desperate and dangerous. If Michael called the police while driving, the passenger would hear, would see, would react. But if he just completed the ride and said nothing, he was now an accomplice, wasn't he? A witness at minimum. And witnesses to drug deals don't tend to live long, healthy lives. The 22-minute ride suddenly felt like a death sentence ticking down. The passenger's phone rang again. "What?" he answered sharply. "No. I told you." "Wait. What? Where?" A pause. Michael heard another voice through the phone, frantic, shouting something indecipherable. The passenger's face transformed fear, replacing aggression, panic drowning out bravado. "Are you serious? How many?" Another pause. Okay. I'm thinking." He leaned forward suddenly, his face appearing between the front seats, close enough that Michael could smell his breath. "Change of plans. Take the next right." "Now!" His voice had changed. Desperation had entered it. Raw and unmistakable. Michael's throat felt dry. "The app says straight for another." The passenger cut him off. "I don't care what the app says. Turn right now." Michael turned, his hands trembling slightly on the wheel. They were heading into an even more isolated area now, away from main streets, into a neighborhood where houses huddled behind security bars and streetlights had been shot out years ago and never replaced. Every instinct Michael possessed screamed at him to stop, to end this, to get away. But he kept driving, paralyzed by fear and indecision. What would happen to his family if something happened to him tonight? Who would pay the medical bills? Who would take care of his children? Then, like a nightmare materializing, Michael saw them blue and red lights in the distance ahead, maybe 6 blocks away. A police checkpoint. They were setting up traffic cones, waving cars through one at a time, checking licenses, looking into vehicles. It was a standard late-night DUI checkpoint, something Michael had passed through a dozen times before. But tonight, with this passenger and that bag and those packages, it was a wall, an end, a moment of truth. Michael felt his foot unconsciously ease off the gas pedal. The passenger saw the lights too. "No," he breathed. "No, no, no." His hand shot forward and grabbed Michael's shoulder hard. "Turn around. Turn around. Right now." But there was nowhere to turn. They were on a one-way street. Cars were lined up behind them now. Turning around would be obvious, suspicious. Exactly the kind of behavior that would make police officers reach for their radios and their weapons. Michael's mind cleared with the sudden, cold clarity that comes in true crisis. He had seconds to decide. Keep driving toward the checkpoint with drugs in his car, drugs he was now knowingly transporting, and hope for the best. That was insane. The passenger would panic, something terrible would happen, or make a choice. Do something. Take control of his own fate instead of being swept along in someone else's criminal nightmare. Listen to me very carefully, Michael said, his voice suddenly steady, surprising himself. I'm going to pull over right here. You're going to take your bag and get out of my car. Right now. We both walk away. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody goes to jail. You disappear into the night, and I drive through that checkpoint like nothing happened. The passenger's grip on his shoulder tightened painfully. You think I'm stupid? You'll drive straight to the cops the second I'm out. Michael met his eyes in the rearview mirror. You're right. I might. But right now, in about 90 seconds, we're both going to be at that checkpoint. And when they search this car, we both go down. I lose my family. You lose everything in that bag and probably spend the next 10 years in prison. So you've got one choice. Trust me for 30 seconds, or we both lose everything in 90. The mathematics of desperation. The passenger's eyes darted between Michael's face in the mirror, the checkpoint ahead, the dark street beside them. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then, suddenly, his hand released Michael's shoulder. Pull over, he said quietly. Michael eased the car to the curb, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. The passenger grabbed his bag, opened the door, and paused. You didn't see anything tonight. Understand? Nothing. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of survival. Michael nodded. The passenger stepped out into the darkness and vanished between two houses within seconds, as if he'd never existed at all. The door hung open for a moment, and Michael reached back and pulled it shut. His hands were shaking violently now. He sat there for 30 seconds, breathing, just breathing. The reality of what almost happened crashed over him like a cold wave. Then he put the car in drive and slowly approached the checkpoint. The officer waved him forward, shined a flashlight briefly into the back seat, empty now. Nothing suspicious, checked his license, asked if he'd been drinking. No, sir, Michael said, his voice surprisingly calm. Just trying to make some money. The officer nodded, handed back his license, and waved him through. Michael drove away slowly, professionally, like he'd done 1,000 times before. But inside, he was collapsing. 3 blocks later, he pulled into a gas station parking lot, turned off the car, and sat in the silence. His phone buzzed. 5 stars from the passenger, no tip, and a message. Thanks for the ride. Michael stared at those words for a long time. Thanks for the ride. Like it had been normal. Like his life hadn't been in danger. Like he hadn't just made a decision that could have destroyed everything he loved. He opened the Uber app and went offline. Then he drove home through the pre-dawn darkness, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to deep blue to grey. When he pulled into his driveway, his wife was already awake, making coffee in the kitchen. She smiled at him. "Good night?" she asked. Michael looked at her trusting eyes, her gentle face, the life they'd built together, and felt something break inside him. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But I think I'm done with the night shift." He never told her what happened. How could he explain the weight of that duffel bag, the chemical smell, the panic in the passenger's eyes, the moment at the checkpoint when their lives hung in balance? She wouldn't understand. Or maybe she'd understand too well and worry every time he left the house. Some experiences carve themselves into you, changing your shape from the inside. Michael stopped driving after midnight. He picked up a second job instead, working mornings at a warehouse. Less money, but safer. Predictable. No strangers with desperate eyes and bags full of secrets. No impossible choices made in the space between heartbeats. Just honest work. And at the end of the day, he came home to his family, whole and alive. What would you have done in Michael's place? Would you have driven to the checkpoint? Called the police? Made the same choice he did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. These are the real stories that happen every night in cities around the world, stories that never make the news, lived by ordinary people pushed into extraordinary situations. If you want to hear more true stories from the last ride, subscribe to this channel right now. And don't leave yet, the next video is even more intense, a story you absolutely need to hear. Thank you for riding with us tonight. Stay safe out there. The streets are darker than they seem.